Get going. So I'm Dwayne. I enjoy things other than tech and being a giant nerd, as I just proved before I started the recording. And I have a life. I crochet, sir, and I go sing karaoke, sir. So yes, I don't just do really stupid, hard data problems, but I do love those as well. I've been at Pantheon for a few years, five and almost a half at Pantheon. We all know what Pantheon is here. We're the web operations platform. Still getting used to that in my mouth, but it's true. That's actually what Pantheon is. We help teams of people do things more efficiently, and teams of one can also benefit. Multi-devs, I think, are most superpower, but we can talk about that afterwards. Always like to take a quick poll of the room, since there's only a few people in the room today. Just go around real quick. What do you do? Like, are you a developer, designer, or where do you see yourself inside the business?
I'm Kathy. I'm a Drupal developer. I've been around for a few years.
Awesome.
I'm Rob. I'm an entrepreneur, and I do Drupal sort of business builds when the startups.
Awesome. So, a Drupal developer, an entrepreneur.
Drupal developer at Stanford, although I never get to do enough development, and also iOS developer.
Awesome. Another developer. Freelance site builder. Jack of all trades. All work.
My name's Ricardo. I work for a Drupal agency and do like project and client management.
Awesome. I think you'll get a lot out of this. And you just walked in. We're just doing a quick introduction of like, yeah, what are you, developer, designer, project manager? What's your role?
I'm Aaron Cole. Stanford for 7 schools here. I'm a developer turned manager. So.
A developer turned manager. Okay, awesome. This might actually be the most applicable to you of any person that said anything, other than maybe our friend over here who does everything, because everything's going to be practical. All right, a quick crunch time to see if you need to stay in this room or you have time to go to another talk. Who already is very familiar with Markdown? A couple of hands? Okay, I think you're in the right room then. If you'd all said, I know this inside and out, I would have said, you don't need to be a beginner talk for this. Here's an actual problem that I hit, and this is admittedly a WordPress problem, using a Markdown conversion tool there. But I have this beautiful bit of data that I had in a sheet. I can't rewind my YouTube controls from return, but I had this beautiful bit of data, and I copy pasted it into a thing that transformed Markdown, or transformed it into something that looks like this. And that's not what it was in the original form. Let it loop back through. And here is, I'll pause it this time. Here is a document, and this is how I actually took notes for a particular meeting that happened internal to Pantheon at one point. It was a series of meetings, and it was like, all right, this is a nice little layout that I can see like how things are indented, and I pasted it into a thing, and bam, it's just like, wow, that is not good. If I was gonna do this with the CK editor, but it's the exact same thing. It just like, I get confused because you just threw a bunch of text at me, and I kind of got lost in the formatting, you copy paste. It's getting better, sure. 8.7 is very promising on that, but it's still a problem. And it's not a problem that I am alone in this. Okay, it's not a problem that I have alone. This is a problem that's been dogging us in computer science really from the beginning, and it's the transport problem. Ultimately, what we really need, and Tom said it very more eloquently than I did before I found this quote, is we need something that's transportable from one place to another. Well, not all that long ago, there was this thing came around to try to solve that called Markdown. And if you look at Wikipedia, it says this, and that's accurate. But this was a conversation between these two guys who said, hey, we were collaborating back in 2004, way back in the old days, said, wow, there's got to be a better way to transport this stuff around. And other people had hacked at it, and other people had attempted it. But they said, you know, what if we just said that it would be structurally valid HTML based on a simple notation? Gruber went on to do his own thing, and Aaron went on to be a founder of Redis, and or Reddit, not Redis, Reddit, and other interesting entrepreneurial things. Quick sad note, Aaron Swartz is no longer with us. He, most people probably know the story, but took his own life. So if you know someone that's down or like thinks too much about a computer science problem or legal problems, or that's what he got himself into, legal problems with JSTOR, trying to open source all of the world's knowledge. He was really fighting the good, I think. But he got overwhelmed with it. So if you know somebody that's going through that, talk to him, let them know there's help. That's just a terrible thing because Aaron had so much to give. All right, back to non-depressing things. What they talked about is like, what if we had this one notation, and this notation, no matter where we wrote it and how we wrote it, would transform into this understood thing. Basically, that's what HTML is in the first place, isn't it? Like, it's a notation system. We can mark up any little bit of text, and it will just work across this commonly agreed thing called a browser. That's what HTML is all about. So why not further that and make a shorthand of it? And that's all we're really talking about today. So if this slide all clears it up for you and you can read this and know exactly what it says, again, now's the time to go do a hallway track or something else because the rest of us is going to really dig into there. So this is an idea, very good idea that got implemented, but this is not a language. Variance is the key word in all of this. That's why I underlined it. Markdown is a notation, and there is the Blazing Fireball. There's a Fireball notation of it, which is like Gruber wrote, that we kind of base all this off of. But places like GitHub have a very specific one that Daring Fireball, not Blazing Fireball, Daring Fireball. This is they actually implemented that, and you can put all sorts of fun extensions on GitHub's version of it, and it's pretty awesome. The really good example I like is from the WP CLI world. In the WordPress side, this is their beautiful website, but if we look at the raw of this page, there is our wonderful friend Markdown, and there is good old-fashioned HTML because GitHub don't care. If one or the other, it will just transform it and do the same. This is just a link, and this is a link to GitHub. Those look exactly the same. If we go back, there it is. That and that are two different things. But don't care. Versus Stack Exchange, which says very specifically, here's what I like, and this is what I'm going to accept as your Markdown notation. Do these things, just these things. Everything else use basic HTML. Versus Reddit, which has a similar help menu someplace. I didn't screenshot it. But it accepts Markdown. Not shocking given that Aaron founded Reddit and forced it in there. Thank goodness he did. Recently, there's been this thing called Gutenberg. I'm in the wrong talk. Apologies, everybody. No, this is the Drupal edition. But never mind, I forgot to take this slide out. See how the sausage is made. Because I originally wrote this talk for WordPress World. There's a thing called Gutenberg, which got pushed into core, which accepts Markdown. So now Markdown even works in WordPress natively, out of the box. In fact, back at WordCamp Europe 2018, in June, so a year ago, someone asked Matt, what's his favorite feature of this Gutenberg editor? And Matt Mulweg, the founder and head of the project, said, oh yeah, I love to be able to copy paste Markdown. And I was one of the few people in the audience like, yay, I love this use case. We'll get to more of that later, but there's not an equivalent in Drupal, but we'll talk about that. We'll get there. So that's what the rest of this is a walkthrough of Markdown, which means the way you're going to make the best out of this is open up a text editor. There's actually text editors that will, on demand, be closed when you thought they were open. Like Markdown. Let's open real quick. Markdown. Markdown is a beautiful editing tool that I can type my Markdown. Oh, I guess I'm not recording this. Okay. I tried to hit record and it's not letting me. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, oh, I can't record it. It's auto recording. I see the way it was set up. So here's some beautiful Markdown. And there's my link, and it just transforms it for me. I don't have to think about it. I just have to know this part. So there's tools like that you can highly recommend if you're just learning. Those are great things, or we'll actually be talking about using them in production scenarios. There's a lot of things online. In fact, I just found out from Andrew Malice that there's a thing called Prose.io, which lets you write beautiful Markdown directly to your GitHub, and it will do all sorts of pre-processing and wonderful things for the extensions of Markdown, and it's a really cool tool. So just go there, you can freely use it, and just plugs right into your GitHub account. But if you were, I just don't want to install anything. I just want some magical website that I can type into and it will auto transform in a window like I just showed with Markdown. Stackedit.io/app. There's another one, but it keeps going up and down, and I've stopped recommending it. So I won't talk about it anymore. But if you see another version of the slides and you see another editor I recommend on this slide, that is not it. So welcome. So you just missed the part where I said the best way you're going to make use of this talk, because you just came in just for the meat of it, is to open up a text editor and type along. And if you have one of these tools installed, it will do like a side-by-side display that will show you what it will transform into. But if you'd like to see an online version of that where you don't have to install anything, just go here, stackedit.io/app, and you can freely do that. Not logging into anything and just have it. All right. Or honestly, you can just write in literally anything that's ever existed in the history of text editing. And I'm not joking about this. How I take notes, this is actually my process for writing my blog. I write a blog for every event, including this one. And here are my notes for this event. Linked to where we are, linked to Dan's account from the notes I took there. I didn't take a lot of notes there. And there's Twitter for the talk I saw from Andrew yesterday. And I do that for a very specific reason I'll get into later. But that's just a text editor. That was just Text Wrangler. I like Text Wrangler because I can organize my thoughts on the side. But I also write sublime text a lot. I'm not a fan of Emacs, but it's cool. I'm learning Vim slowly but surely. All right, critical point in the talk. Who is not familiar with HTML? And it's fine if you're not. If you were like brand new to HTML, I have some advice for you. Okay, awesome. Code Academy. Code Academy has a basic HTML class that's completely free. That is awesome. It will walk you through the bare bones basics of writing beautiful, simple HTML. And once you learn basically this, if you learn these things, you know like 90% of what you will do with HTML by hand. You can disagree with me on that if you have other use cases for HTML, but this is kind of it. These are the big ones. What Markdown is a shorthand to turn these into these without having to write these, or to get to these without having to manually type them out, because typing href equals and then making sure you close it is a pain, at least to me. And sort imaging, like you can forget the alt text and it's not obvious you forget the alt text, and that sucks. So we're just gonna walk through them. So type along and you'll have this entire talk in your keyboard by the time we're done. So headers. One hashtag is an H1. Two hashtags is an H2. Three hashtags is an H3. What's four hashtags? Five? Yeah. This is critical. Getting this correct. This is semantic proper accessibility for the way you lay out your content. This is kind of tricky through a drag and drop, and let's make sure that we picked the right thing. Versus visually, I just scan the doc and like, oh, I have three hashtags underneath a four. Is that right? Did I do that right? Instead of that, does that look right to me? Is that the formatting in my view, does that look right? So accessibility, this is actually a pretty cool, handy little tool to check things. Italics. Throw a line on either side. That's it. So line, or underscore, I'm sorry, not line. Underscore, this. Who uses italics in they write? Anybody use italics in their normal everyday writing? Yeah. If you don't, that's fine. Not everybody has to use italics. But you should use bold. Make your points loudly, clearly. Make them bold and pop off the page. Again, that's a good visual way to make your point. Like, and it's something that's very accessible too. It will say, bold. You can do both together. You can combine pretty much any of the notations together in any order, as long as they logically end. So it wouldn't, if I typed it asterisk, asterisk, underscore, and then the other side asterisk, asterisk, underscore, that wouldn't work. I gotta like back in, first in, last out, by low. But that's it. Bold and italics together. Unordered lists. The reason that I actually prefer writing in Notepad than into the Gutenberg editor in WordPress directly is this. It is hard to do nested lists in that tool. It's very easy to do nested lists in Markdown, because if I want another level in, I just hit tab or a couple spaces. Markdown don't really care. It just knows that we have indented and we can keep nesting things down and down and down and down. Now, will that interpret correctly wherever you put it? Maybe. Again, we're not talking about a defined language here like PHP or COBOL or something. We are talking about an idea of shorthand transforming basic HTML from just text notation. So sometimes the interpreter will pick that up. Gutenberg's does. Markdown does as well, at least in partially. So that's unordered lists, and then there's ordered lists. So again, same thing here. This one worked better for the nesting universally than this one, because some systems, again, interpret those indentations a little strangely. Again, there's no like one authority to say, hey, do it this way. Links. Again, the thing I hate writing the worst in all of HTML is href. I just hate it. I don't even know why I hate it so much, but I do. Versus open close bracket, the square bracket, open close parentheses, that's it. And then I just throw my text in the brackets and link in the parentheses, and it just figures it out very quick. So that's when my notes for this actual talk, that's why Andrew Malice is in square brackets and the link to his Twitter account is in Angular or parentheses, because that will transform magically into a link, linking to his Twitter. You can also do links in the very fun way that makes basically footnotes for you for the end product that you have. Because you can say, I'm going to key value pair these two square brackets together. So link is now hooked to text. But we can sub out what's in link by saying link : and then an address. Now the benefit of this is you can say text 1, text 2, text 3, text 4, all the way down the page. And down at the bottom of the page, that's where your list of links go. You've already built your footnote bibliography as you've gone. Some systems transform these kind into this automatically. Gutenberg used to, it stopped doing it, and I haven't checked again recently if it does this. It depends again on the interpreter, how it does that. Good.
So for what if you wanted a title attribute?
That's going to depend on your interpreter, but title attributes Markdown. Nope.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yep. That's Daring Fireballs. That will work on GitHub. That will work most places because almost everyone's GitHub or everyone's interpretation comes from this. But that's a great question. And actually that illustrates a point I was going to make much later, but thank you. Wow, I'm not the subject matter expert in Markdown at all. But Markdown's so easy to look up. My job up here is just to expose you all to all of this. I can't teach you how to do all of Markdown today, even though I'm telling you to write your own tutorial as we go. And you're writing your own cheat sheet if you're copying these slides. And you can use these slides, and there's 1,000 other cheat sheets people have written for you, including the original source documentation. So when you have a question like, how do I do that? Someone's already figured that out. Most probably. And we'll talk about later, there's nothing to stop you from making it your own and doing however you want to do it. Because again, it's just a very simple thing where we're going to talk about parsing. Anyway, images. I like it for images a lot because the first thing you have to put in is alt text after an exclamation point and open bracket. It demands it. It looks weird if you don't do it. You can ignore it, but there you go. So same answer for any other questions you're going to ask about what else to add in there for image attributes. Yeah, I don't know. We're gonna have to look that up. But I would imagine they go in the same alt text field. I'd imagine. Anyhow, block quotes, not something I use every day, to be honest with you, but it's nice to know I can. It's like, I need to make this a special call out in my docs. All right, let's make that there. Okay, now we got a call out and we're just keep going. Does anybody use block quote ever? Yeah, every now and again, it's just the right thing to use. But it's just square, or less than, or greater than sign, sorry. Greater than sign. I say side caret, but that's completely wrong. Code. Oh, I forgot to include that example and where else this all works and where this comes in the most handy in my day-to-day. This ability to throw backticks around a thing. Backticks are above are on the same key as the tilde. That's what that thing does. If you put just around it, it will make code. And if you put like 3 in a row, you can just write a block of code. That's because Slack also accepts Markdown. So next time you're trying to pass a variable name through Slack, throw backticks around it. It will make it so much clearer what you're doing. Any little snippet of code, even in the middle of a giant paragraph, just pops out and like, okay, that's what I'm actually looking for. And your GitHub README pages are going to look instantly a million times better. And you're never going to have to open close bracket code ever again. Because GitHub, my mission with this talk originally was to make at least one developer's GitHub README look better. And I succeeded in that. So now my mission is to just spread the good word about Markdown. With that guy in Baltimore, who's awesome. All right, so that's code. And there's a lot of other things. See the link that's not there, which is supposed to be actually this page. So see the sausage we made real quick. Why is that box there? Sorry, everybody. I've done this talk before, but I updated it for you guys, and you get the benefit of an unrefined deck. All right, so go see the project for other many things you can do. There's just a lot of them. There's extensions you can have for the parser that you can get into that will do all sorts of neat graphing things and things I'm not going to talk about because that's like way over even my head. But visually, like drawing graphs by just connecting angled lines together with words, that's a total possibility with Markdown. Last thing I'll say about it is you don't have to take Daring Fireball version of this. If you're like, I like this, except I would like to make it this, this, and this. Nothing's stopping you from writing your own parser. That is all we're doing is like, look for regular expression of this. And if that happens, throw this around the following text. That's all it really does. There's a guy I know in the WordPress community, Carl Alexander. He wrote a book called Object-Oriented Programming for WordPress. It's a really, really thorough, good, deep dive into OOP. He wrote the whole thing in PHP Storm, in Markdown, and then wrote his own parser to turn it into an EPUB file. Because that was the fastest way he could do version control on his docs and control the process of turning it into an EPUB file without relying on a third-party service that might not interpret his Markdown the way he was. This is just an open source idea. It is an abstraction layer away from language, truly, but Daring Fireball is a great jumping off point. If you like their route, implement their route because it just works. So how do we get from writing locally on an airplane in a text editor into website? Well, if you have a Drupal site, you have a couple options here. We can. My favorite way that I have found doing this a bunch of different ways in preparation for this talk is still writing it in a third-party tool like Markdown, going up to the format and copying the HTML. It will transform all the HTML. It already is doing it. And I can take whatever's there and literally copy all the beautiful HTML that's there, jump into CK editor, go to source, bam, drop it in, and that is beautiful formatted HTML, just like that. It's reliable. This worked every time I tried it. HTML doesn't break in source. It's one of the things they nailed, everybody. Like CK editor is awesome at that. The cons are you have to use a third-party tool outside of Drupal in your editing experience. And totally get that is what a lot of people are trying to avoid. But this is super reliable. And if you're using it for your own notation and your own work, which is how you should start thinking about this stuff. So if you're not familiar with this before you go implement this company-wide and demand your content editor to start writing in Markdown, which is ultimately what I'm going to argue that we should be doing, yeah, to start using fun things like this and stop thinking about the tooling side of it too much as you're learning it. But route 2 is there are multiple modules out there for Markdown. The one I'm actually demoing here is CK Editor. CK Editor Markdown module, which gives you the ability to write in Markdown mode and then flip back to normal mode. So with that, I'm going to make a new piece of content. Anybody see my tour talk yesterday? I wrote a tour for that particular page we're just on. All right. Tours are awesome as well. So we're going to add a new piece of content. And I want to write a new, I'm going to write a new article. And here we go. I'm going to flip to full HTML mode. And there's my button for Markdown. Now, how to get it in there, install the module, then go edit the editor and drop it down in your toolbar. And that's all it is. That's the entire install process. It takes you a couple minutes. And then I can flip to Markdown mode, and it gives me this little Markdown editor. And I can go back to somewhere where I've already written all this, copy it over, and then click out of Markdown mode, and there it is. I can publish that as is. This works reliably well. I found that there is a bug that I didn't really dig into, and I'm not sure I really want to as a person, even though I do love digging into geeky things, is if when I click this again, oh, it actually worked this time. I've done this several times where it messes up a little bit of, there it did it that time. When I come back in and out for the second time, something happens and I don't quite know what. Whereas it doesn't format the second time around. But the first time, if I copy the whole thing again, back out, come back in, paste. Oh, it broke that time too. So again, we found a little bit of a bug. Why? I don't know. Easy enough to fix out here and clean up my work. Still saved me all the time of like having to do this within like writing the HTML. So not a great sales pitch for this one. There are others. There are others that worked arguably better or worse. In fact, I found out that Josh Koenig, one of our founders of Pantheon, used to maintain the Markdown module for Drupal back in Drupal 6 days. It requires yet another module, but it does allow you to write Markdown directly into Drupal or copy paste it in. So if you're like, I don't ever want to leave the editor for some reason, you don't have to. There's tons of ways to get to that up that mountain. Which means I can turn this into this just by copy pasting. Except not quite, because those Twitter and URL embeds, Twitter and YouTube embeds, there is a URL embed module, but I couldn't make it work. I tried for about a day and I just couldn't make it do exactly what I thought it should be doing, which is I just throw it a URL and it magically transforms it into this. However, every social media you'd ever want to embed ever has an embed function drilled directly into it. So if I go to Twitter and I go look at this tweet, is a manual process? Sure. But there it is. That is the code I just throw in CK Editor, like I would do in a normal day. Combine that with Markdown, and that's pretty straightforward. Is it super fluid? Not really, to be honest with you. Which asks the question, are we going to marry ourselves to CK Editor forever? I don't know. Mullenweg's, I got drinks with Matt Mullenweg and a bunch of people at WordCamp Portland last year. And he was making open jokes about how successful Gutenberg was that even the Drupal community was adopting it. It delights him because he's gone past WordPress and true democratization of publishing. Because there's no reason we can't use this. Has anyone tried Gutenberg on their site yet? What do you think? I actually haven't.
Great. I mean, my personal site is.
Oh, sure. Okay. Anybody tried it on a Drupal site though? It exists. Like somebody's ported it over. Fine German folks that ported it over for us.
They fixed their accessibility.
Oh no. That's a completely separate talk. No. Yes, Gutenberg itself is not accessible. In fact, WP Campus, like a few weeks ago, put out their like gigantic accessibility audit where they looked at every conceivable way you could look at accessibility, and it failed massively. It was like 3,000 violations or something. It's just, but they're known and we can fix them. So I'm not down on Gutenberg for that. Yes, it's got problems. But for this specific use case, it does this wonderful magic thing. If you throw it a naked URL and it knows what that naked URL is, it just magically transforms into a block. So these two things here got transformed from this inside of Gutenberg. So that's another route. Again, it's yet another module. Yes, there are tons of problems with it. If you're a university, no, do not use Gutenberg if you can help it, because you're going to get dinged for accessibility at some point. Please provide another path for right now. For right now, it's Classic Editor, even though that has its own whole ball of wax of problems. So let me talk very quickly about how I actually do that in WordPress. Because once you start tinkering with an idea of like, well, how far can I push this? What's the extrapolation of how far is this transportable? What can I actually do with this thing? Again, referring back to my blog that I write in WordPress, or actually I write in Markdown, and then it gets published into WordPress as an artifact of it. There we go. I store these things in GitHub publicly, just in the Markdown files. Just they're out there. I built a little tiny set of code that grabs it from GitHub, transforms it on right into Gutenberg or into WordPress. Then I test it with Behat, and then I ship it to my test environment, and then I visual regression test it to make sure nothing broke, and then I ship it to live if that all worked. That's a giant Rube Goldberg device. But it saves me a few minutes a week, so every time I publish, so I like it. I published all of it, like it's open source. You can have all of it you want. But if I didn't write my notes in Markdown because it was easier to copy paste at some point, I would have never built this. This is a logical extreme of how transportable Markdown can be. That I can take input from GitHub and it will just magically transform through a parser that just knows what to do with Markdown. That's logical extreme, the beauty of it. As my friend Jamie once said, once you start seeing the uses for it, you see it everywhere. It's just like regex. Like, once you learn regex, even a little bit, it's like, oh, I could probably solve that with regex. So I start seeing the world like I can solve that problem with Markdown. Not really, but close to it. I am just a humble person explaining possibilities here. If you want to learn this stuff, oh man, there's so many great ways to learn it. Even the Markdown tutorial is an interactive tutorial that will walk you through learning all of what I just taught you or exposed to you today. Learn in Y Minutes has a really awesome set of docs about this. But really just go to DuckDuckGo and type in learn Markdown, and it's going to be endless pages of resources and blogs and tips and tricks and how to write your own parsers and everything you'd want to know. Ultimately, I think we can get to a world where we can just train content editors in about 20 minutes with a very handy printout they can keep right by their monitor of like, here's how you write your content. You can write it whatever you want, however you like to write it, but just use this format. If you want to be bold, do this. If you want to be that. Reddit users have been doing this. This is the use case. This isn't like a far off dream. People that are just smart enough to get online and just smart enough to get Redis have figured out how to use Markdown. If they can do it, content editors at actual companies shouldn't have a problem with being told this is the better way to do it. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy overnight transition, but it solves an entire world of pain that I hear so many people complain about. That I get a Word doc that's a 98 word doc. What do I do with that? I don't know, but you can pull the text out of it, can't you? And if that text is already in a transportable format, that's not a problem. I can do that all day. But don't ask me to transform their PDF into something, because that's just madness. Unless they wrote it in Markdown, then you can copy paste it. Again, there's no form where it breaks as long as you understand what's on the path. But I'm Wayne. You can clap now if you're going to clap. I like this because these are two completely unrelated GIFs, but for some reason it looks like he's looking at Riker like, why are you so intense on about all this? But that's it. I talked longer than I thought I was going to, but I had a little bit of a slow start. So a couple minutes left. Does anybody actually have a question?
Well, coming to the question.
Sure.
I've been using Markdown with Gmail and with a little plugin from it's really great, and it's a way for me to include Markdown the same way you were talking about including Markdown in Slack. I can include Markdown in my Gmail, and it's a great way to advocate for Markdown, because when people see my emails coming in with great formatting, the code in the right columns and all the good. I can even do tables. In Markdown in my emails, and so they ask me, how did you do Markdown? You can install it to markdown-here.com for the
Wow.
Cool, and
You know, I've never actually thought about putting it in my Gmail. I use it in Google Docs all the time, but I've never thought about Gmail. That's a brilliant idea.
How do you get Google Docs?
There's an add-on. Look for a Markdown, there's a bunch of them, but a Markdown converter. So if I do,
So it's like a browser.
do you all know this trick? Docs.new or doc.new. This is docs.new. Yeah, docs.new opens a new doc in Drive. Just, there's a brand new one. That's all you gotta do. I rarely actually type in. I thought I had a bookmark for it, but anyway. So I'll paste in my handy dandy Markdown, and then I got an add-on. I got two actually installed. One's render document, and script test document needs permission to run. I don't want to run an external script. That's why I found the other one, wasn't it? Nope. Every tool works a little different, don't it? All right, there we go. I haven't done this in a minute. Format selection. It's a two-step process, but it works very, very well. And there's my lovely code. I can copy, paste, close, and copy. So far. Okay, there it is. All right, oh, it's a chat. Someone else had a question online, I think. Let's find the window. Doc.new also worked. Hey, that's good to know. Thanks, Cheryl. Doc.new and docs.new both work. I guess they got the domains for both. Makes sense. All right, other questions? Well, thank you very much. I'm going to go put Markdown into my Google Mail right now. So enjoy the rest of your Stanford camp, everybody.
Nice.